From Wilmette Institute, welcome to Changing Course Labcast.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wilmette Institute Changing Course Labcast series. I'm your host, Emily Chou. In each episode, we explore vital issues with profound implications for humanity, such as race unity, education, environmental stewardship, and social change. Through thoughtful conversation, we're joined by scholars, practitioners, and change makers who help us connect ideas to meaningful action. Wilmette Institute is an online learning community grounded in an evolving Baha'i framework for collective learning. Through our accredited certificate program, we invite learners to advance their academic and professional paths while exploring current discourses and social transformation within their fields of study. Through dynamic consultation with peers and faculty and engagement in real-world grassroots efforts, participants develop the capacity to become skilled protagonists in their careers and communities. Thank you for being part of this learning journey. Let's begin. Our guest today is Gelareh. Would you mind introducing yourself today?
Sure. My name is Gelareh Eslami. I'm originally from Iran, currently living in San Diego, California. My academic background is in curriculum development, and much of my work has focused on helping learners develop capabilities through the integration of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and qualities. I came to the Wilmette Institute expecting to encounter concepts I already knew. In fact, I assumed much of it would feel like a review of ideas I had been working with for years. I was wrong. What surprised me was that the course didn't just introduce new concepts. It challenged assumptions I didn't even know I'm still carrying.
Mm-hmm.
The course encouraged me to look more closely at how we come to know things, whose knowledge we value, and what kind of relationships make meaningful learning possible.
Thank you for such a nice introduction, and it's been so nice having Gelareh. She was part of one of the courses I was TAing about education, and I felt very similarly that you think you know a lot about one thing, and then you just jump into a new arena and you learn so much more. So we're so glad to have you here, and your experience is so valuable. And our topic that we wanted to talk about today is about learning as a mode of operation, a way of acting in the world as a learner and as always learning in that mode. So do you maybe have a story or some reflections that you'd like to share about the concept of learning as a mode of operation?
Sure. As a curriculum developer, I had long moved beyond the idea that education is simply transfer of information. My work had always focused on capability development and the integration between, as I said, knowledge, skills, attitudes, actions. But what surprised me was realizing that there were still assumptions beneath that understanding that I had never fully examined. One of the biggest shifts for me came from exploring different ways of knowing. Although I was educated in Iran and studied through BIHE, which is an institution created by the Baha'i community, after Baha'is were denied access to university education in Iran, I had assumed that my educational lens has already would be quite different from the mainstream Western approaches. But I was surprised to discover how many of my assumptions about knowledge nevertheless has been shaped by the dominant Western educational paradigms. The course introduced me to scholarships and experiences from Indigenous and Black communities that I had not deeply engaged with before. I became interested not only in what people knew, but in how they came to know it and how knowledge emerged through relationships, community, and lived experiences. It also made me think differently about the relationship between academia and communities. The idea that communities can generate knowledge was not new to me. I was familiar with that idea through participation in Baha'i community building activities in the Baha'i community. And I already knew that communities can learn together through reflection, study, action. So that idea was not new. But what was new for me was imagining a reciprocal relationship between academia and community, which knowledge flows in both direction and not only one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really beautiful concept to see how learning does and it can be possible for it to be in this cycle of learning. That's a lot more fluid and it's less maybe a
Mhm.
top-down learning or that
Mhm.
it doesn't even flow, I guess, between the two, that maybe there's learning happening here and learning happening here, but there's not that flow between. So very
Yeah, the last thing about the course that I wanted to mention was that I became more aware about the idea of embodiment.
good.
I came to know that I often understand something intellectually long before I understand it emotionally. There was a sentence from an elder in our course saying, no es saber, es sentir in Spanish, which means it's not knowing, it's feeling. So I really like that idea and I became more aware. Now I pay attention to how it works, how my body responds to what I learn.
That's really beautiful. It's so nice to hear how many beautiful concepts you've been learning about learning as a mode of operation. And I'm curious also then, how are you seeing that apply to your life? How is that like taking shape in your life?
One of the more important insights I gained was that learning does not come just from the classroom. Learning is one of the primary ways human beings navigate life. We have the capacity not only to think and act, but also to reflect on our thinking and our actions. We can examine assumptions, we can learn from experience, we can adjust our behavior, and we can consciously change course. Once you start thinking about learning this way, you begin to see it everywhere. Take marriage, for example. We often think of marriage as a relationship, which of course it is, but also I started seeing it as a lifelong process of learning. Many of us want to build a relationship that feels like a great rock of strength on which to lean in time of need. But that kind of environment does not simply appear. Two people learn their way into it, they face challenges, they reflect on their experiences, they consult together, they examine their assumptions, they change certain behaviors, and slowly over time, they generate knowledge about what helps their family flourish. Through that process, they build more trust, more understanding, more resilience, and more unity. So hopefully, the marriage is a great rock of strength on which to lean in time of need. I also began to see the same learning process in the practice of bringing ourselves to account each day. At the end of the day, we pause and reflect. What did I do well? What did I fall short? What assumptions guided my decisions and actions? What can I learn from today's experiences? In many ways, that is a daily exercise in learning. The same pattern also appears in service to our communities. We observe a reality, we recognize a need, we take action, we reflect on the results, study what we are learning, make adjustments, and act again. Understanding emerges through this continuous cycle of action, reflection, consultation, and refinement. The shift for me was realizing that learning isn't just something that supports life. In many ways, learning is life.
Mm. Wow, that's a beautiful statement. Um, yeah, that really makes me think too that yeah, learning is in every part of life if we can make it that way. Like if we are in that process and mode of learning. If we're not, then we just are in that series of actions. Like even in a marriage, like my husband and I, if we're just like going through life and doing one thing at a time and then this happened or that happened, it doesn't allow us to actually be part of a learning process versus if we do have like goals and we're kind of looking at our progress, reflecting on. I love how you keep bringing in like assumptions. Like we're so used to maybe what we were raised with, so we have to examine if that's actually valid. So all of that comes in part of that process of learning that everyone can benefit from, thinking of each aspect of their life as part of what they can learn about. So that's beautiful. Um, so I'm also curious, as a student and as an educator in the field of education, how has your experience been with the pedagogy of the Wilmette Institute, and how has that pedagogy contributed to your own transformation?
One of the things that impressed me the most was the coherence between the ideas being explored and the way the course was designed. As an instructional designer, I noticed design choices, the collaborative activities, reflection, exercises, dialogue, and project all reinforced together the principles that the design was around. I really loved the way each session began. We would start with music and reflection, exploring how the themes expressed in a song connected to the ideas we would be studying together.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, those openings were another example of the course's coherence. The course wasn't only engaging the intellect, it was intentionally engaging the whole person.
Yeah, it makes me really think like how music is such a way that we can also learn, and to learn from these artists who have put together their thoughts so beautifully for us to understand a part of reality too. So seeing
Mm,
that's another way we can also see like learning as part of life too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also very uplifting for the spirit. I loved it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another thing that had the greatest impact on me was the quality of accompaniment.
Mm.
During a particularly difficult period when the conflict in Iran was affecting people I love and causing significant anxiety for me, I reached out to Ima, our instructor.
Mm.
I was writing to her, letting know that I would not be able to attend our online class. At the time, I was so overwhelmed that I could not sit still long enough to participate. I felt a constant need to be moving. If I wasn't walking around, I was cleaning something, organizing something, or finding some other physical activity. Sitting in front of a screen and focusing on a class simply felt impossible. So I wrote to Ima to let her know that I would not be attending that
Mm.
week's session. I expected a kind and understanding response. What I didn't expect was how thoughtful she would respond. Looking back, there were two aspects of her response that stayed with me. The first was pedagogical, of course. As an educator, I immediately recognized that part of her response was excellent teaching. Connected my experience to that week's reading, which I hadn't even started yet, and
Mm.
encouraged me to explore it as a source of insight. Later, when I read the material on resilience in Black communities, I was deeply moved. The text was powerful on its own, but Ima's guidance helped me approach it in a different way. She helped me see connections I might otherwise have missed.
Mhm.
Although the context was different, I recognized experiences and emotions that felt profoundly familiar. I remember while reading the text, taking deep breaths, nodding my head in pain, going through passages because they captured experiences and emotions that felt profoundly familiar. But her response didn't stop there. She also shared her personal cell phone number and told me I could reach out anytime if I needed support. That part did not register in my head as faculty behavior. It felt like friend behavior. What stayed with me was that combination of intellectual guidance and genuine human care. I felt supported not only as a student engaging with ideas, but as a whole person navigating a difficult moment in life. Another aspect of the course that was transformative for me was the project itself. As someone who speaks English as a second language, I often find myself observing and listening more than I would in my native language. Many aspects of the project pushed me far outside my comfort zone. It required me to engage with people. It required me to build relationships. It required me to act before I actually felt fully prepared. And it required me to learn through the process itself. What surprised me was how often my assumptions surfaced during that experience. I began questioning not only what I knew, but also the tools I was going to use. For example, I was thinking about using an AI note taker while interviewing my collaborator, but I came to know that it comes from an assumption of scarcity of knowledge and that I need to extract it, which is not true. I was ready to schedule the interview, prepare questions, gather information, and write notes. That's what I knew how to do. But what the project actually was asking of me was much harder. I was not supposed to interview my collaborator. I was supposed to build actually a relationship, learn from her, and also share my understanding. It was designed to increase my capacity in building reciprocal relationships and contributing to public discourses, not executing interviews to extract knowledge. I also became more aware of my own tendencies. I realized how often I approach situations from an institutional or task-oriented mindset. Especially when I attended a volunteer service opportunity at my collaborators center, I noticed that I was accustomed to thinking about goals, plans, results, and outcomes, creating tasks and tick them off. Relationships do not work that way. The project challenged me to pay greater attention to relationships, accompaniment, and the human process through which learning and transformation actually occur. In many ways, the project helped me move from these ideas, from theory to practice, something I would not simply understand only intellectually. I had to experience it, struggle with it, reflect on it, and gradually grow through it.
Wow, those are such powerful experiences of you seeing yourself as just in a learning mode now. Like you're really thinking through so many different lenses of, how am I identifying what assumptions I have and learning about them and making shifts in your brain so that you can fix the things that you think should be changed. And it's really nice to hear how thorough, I guess, the integration of these different concepts has like really come to fruition in your life.
Very true. Very true.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing all these insights with us. And usually before we go, I want to ask a question about how you feel like there may be actionable steps that listeners can take based on what you've learned.
Sure, yes. One of the most liberating ideas for me was realizing that I do not have to have everything figured out in life. I can approach life as a learner, whether it's marriage, service, work, community building, or spiritual growth. I can ask, what am I learning? What are we learning? And what should we try next? That simple shift has changed the way I think about almost every part of life. It has also changed the way I think about mistakes and challenges. When we see life primarily through a lens of success and failure, mistakes often lead to guilt, shame, or discouragement. But when we see life as a process of learning, mistakes become information. They become signals that something needs adjustment, refinement, or deeper understanding. Although at some point, if you're receiving exactly the same information for the 15th time, it may be worth asking whether the learning has happened yet. Although that doesn't mean I myself has completed this way of thinking, I still catch myself asking, what's wrong with me sometimes. But alongside that, I'm learning to ask different questions. What is this experience teaching me? And perhaps even more importantly, how I translate that learning into action. Because having valuable insights and high ideals by itself doesn't change anything. Transformation begins when learning is translated into action. I mean, that perspective can create hope because it allows us to be honest about our shortcomings without being trapped by them. It allows us to move forward with humility, confidence, and a willingness to keep learning. And it reminds us that growth is never finished.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing these. These are such valuable insights, and I think it can help anyone to just view all of the things that they're doing in a way of learning that really just helps it, like you just said so beautifully, to help it be just a process instead of, I tried something and I failed at it and therefore I'm not going to do it again, or I already learned this. Like that, all of those things are so limiting, and to see it as this entire process of learning, and always ready to learn and consult and act and reflect and be part of that process that is rooted in action. And without that, we can't actually transform ourselves or society. So thank you so much again for joining us on our Changing Course Labcast from the Wilmette Institute, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Stay inspired. Until next time.